Well, hey there, it's Elka, and welcome back to another episode of the Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur Podcast. And this episode is near and dear to my heart because Zazzle is a US-based company, and I am in Canada. And there's so many other coaching clients that we have that are from all over the world, and they're all using the Zazzle platform as well. So today I want to give you some tips for international Zazzle designers, because maybe you live somewhere outside of the US and you'd really like to be on the Zazzle platform as a seller, and you maybe think that there's some restrictions or some things you need to do, but you don't quite know what it is, so you're kind of like holding back and not fully using this opportunity to make money online and create a thriving Zazzle business for yourself so that you can live your dream life. So, hey, how does that sound like an introduction? So if you're interested in that and you're an international seller, stay here, stay tuned, and I am going to cover a ton of things because obviously Jen's not here right now. So I'm doing this podcast solo, and actually, but I will talk a little bit about her experience as well when she was in Spain and doing work there, because ultimately it's really important that you are faithful and truthful with your taxes and everything else that you need to do to make sure that people are, you're clear with all the tax treaties and laws. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean that you can't work using a US-based company as the way for you to make money online. And this Zazzle platform is going to be the way that you can do that. All right, so let's get started. All right, so this podcast is for you if you are somewhere in this world other than in the North American environment, like in the US. Obviously, if you're in Mexico or if you're in Canada, I shouldn't really say North America, I should say if you're not a US citizen and living in the States, then you are, this is going to be applicable to you. And even if you are from the States, maybe this is kind of interesting for you to see how other international designers have to deal with things when they're trying to use the Zazzle platform as a way to make money. All right, and I'm going to cover a couple of points. The first point is what criteria is there for signing up to sell on Zazzle? Second point is where should international designers post their products for sale? We get that all the time. And as a question asked by anybody who's interested in working on the Zazzle platform, and we have some great advice for you. I'm going to talk about that today. But normally, talk about this in our Profit by Design Academy as well in terms of our coaching. But we're going to touch on it here so you get a really good sense of what you need to do. And then the last thing is, actually two more things. What do international designers need to get paid on Zazzle or from Zazzle, right? So if you make sales, you got to get your payouts. So what is it that you need to do that? I can't go into complete tax information because I'm not an accountant, but I can give you generalities so that you know what to ask and look for when you're working with your accountant in your country. Then the last thing is learning how to design and sell to the US market. And this is key to your success. And I'm going to talk about that in depth at the end when I get to that point after I've covered all the others. Okay, so let's start again with number one. What are the criteria for signing up to sell on the Zazzle marketplace? So it's very simple. As long as you're over 13 and you're able to access Zazzle from where country you're in, right? Because some countries are banning certain sites, such as China, but I don't know, because I don't know if anyone from China is able to sell, but any other country where there's restrictions on internet usage, then obviously you can't. But if you have that ability to sign and log on to the Zazzle.com website, then you're good to go. And then that's all there is to point number one, because you just have to be 13 and be able to access the site so you can actually post products. And by accessing the site, it's pretty much guaranteed that then you're allowed to sell, right? There's no restrictions per country except for maybe where you're not allowed to actually access and do this. Okay, so then the second point is where should international designers post their products? And I'll just backstory a bit here. There's the Zazzle.com website, which .com means US, or implies US. And 80% of the customers on the Zazzle platform are from the US. And also the US site, the .com site, is the most developed and robust and offers the most products because Zazzle's home office is or corporate office is in the States, in Redwood, California. And also what's really important is that based on supply chains and what kind of products it can sell internationally and domestically, Zazzle on the .com site offers many more products than they do on any of the other international sites. So then we get into the international sites because they do sell internationally, and they do have a fulfillment center and printing center in Cork, Ireland, so that can cover sort of the other side of the world. The point with any of the other country domains that Zazzle has, like Spain for Zazzle.es, or France, or the state or UK, where it's Zazzle.uk, or what else is another one? Yeah, Zazzle.de, whatever the country codes, and each country has a Zazzle.country site. And because of that, people who are in those countries think that they can only sell to people within their own country. And that is a myth, and I want to dispel that myth today and say, hey, you can sell anywhere in the world on the Zazzle platform, and I highly recommend that each one of you works on the Zazzle.com site, even if you're in a different country. That's what the reason is, because you're not limited to what you can sell based on where you live. And the only reason that they have all those other sites is to help customers with import duties and taxes and so on. And also it then allows the customer who's shopping on, let's say, the Spanish site, they only get a certain number of products, so then it's already pretty clearly outlined by the fact that they can't access and purchase other products through the Spanish site, for example. Then that's the kind of products that basically, by not having those on the ES site, for example, means that those are the ones that you would have to pay import tax duty on if you wanted them, and you'd have to order them from the .com site. I don't know if that makes sense, so I'll repeat it. So each country is going to have a more limited supply of access for customers to purchase certain products, even though you're actually selling them on the .com site. So if a customer wants to come to the .com site and buy something there because they can't find it on their own country site, then they are responsible for paying the import tax and the duty, and so then it's just up to them, right? But you as a designer are definitely not limited to selling within the country that you live in, because that wouldn't be fair, because everyone on the .com site can sell to everybody all over the world as well, right? So you're just design on the Zazzle.com site, and if the only time that you can go to any of these other sites, and it's worth doing, is if you are capable of speaking that other language and writing that other language. Like, for example, I know how to speak French and German and Spanish to some degree, and so I can go to those sites and I can see what the translation is, because when you design on the .com site, Zazzle and whoever's doing the work in the behind the scenes translates and puts it all into that other language on that other platform or domain that is specific for a particular country in that language. So for this Zazzle.es, for example, everything's translated into Spanish, and what you can do though is when you go into the ES site, then you can see maybe there was a really big issue with the translation and it just didn't come through properly, and so you could go in and edit your titles and tags on the Zazzle.es, if that's the one like you're looking at, and you can edit in Spanish. Then you could do that after the product has been migrated onto the ES site. And that would go for every country code or every country domain that Zazzle has, if you're able to properly do something about it. Otherwise, just leave it, because Zazzle's taking care of it as best as they can, and there's sales happening all over the world. It's not stopping customers from buying. It's just that it may or may not always be exactly the way you would hoped it would turn out as a translation, but it's good enough, right? Then even if you're on the Zazzle.com site, you can design things in other languages. So like if you want to have the text in French or in, Japanese or whatever, as your post on the .com site, because you know what, like, we're international, right? Like everywhere there you go, there's a population that is international, right? And so you can easily still sell something that's purely in another language, not English, with a sample text or a design, logo, whatever, in another language on the Zazzle.com site, and it'll get translated into all languages and all country sites that Zazzle owns, irrespective of what the design says, except that now obviously your design would be very targeted to a particular country, but you're still getting people to see that design on all the platforms if that product is sold in those countries, everywhere in the world. Okay, so I hope that helps. It's really important, because I've seen so many of our clients who come and first start with us in the coaching program, and this is one of the things that they've done. They've limited themselves to selling only in the UK or only in Australia, and it's like, wow, you've been missing out, because if you don't post it on the .com site, it won't transfer back, even though we are saying that if you put it on the .com site, it'll go to the other country sites, whereas the other way around, you're limiting yourself, because not only, I don't even know if that's really true, but I don't think that it actually moves to the other sites particularly. And then also, as I mentioned before, not all the products on the .com site are sold on the other country sites because of logistics and so on. And so therefore, you're limiting the amount of products you're actually you're selling. You could be selling more products that are on the .com site. All right, so I think I've covered that quite a bit, made up for number one, which was easy, and but this is one that I always get questions asked about, and so hopefully I've made it very clear now and given you lots of food for thought in terms of where you want to design. All right. And then the second last point is, what do international Zazzle designers need to do to get paid by Zazzle? So this gets a little trickier, but the first thing you have to do, and I'm just going to be really clear and honest with you, I'm not an accountant, but I've had to jump through these hoops myself because I'm in Canada. And so the first thing you have to do is you have to find out if because first of all, your income is taxable. Even though you're trying to start an online business, you go like, good, this, I could keep all the money. It's like, no, you have to report your income and you have to file your taxes, right? So that's a given. But the way you structure your business, depending on what country you're in, you can structure it in a different way so you pay less taxes legally compared to if you were just to report your income as a sole proprietor or as a, just as a personal income, for example. And so you have that opportunity to discuss that with your accountants so that you can best set your company up and make sure that you're paying the taxes you're due to pay, but don't overpay because you didn't understand how to structure your business. But also the IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service, which is the U.S. taxation office, it's what Zazzle has to abide by, and obviously otherwise they can't run their business in the States, because otherwise, they would be in trouble with the IRS. And so because there's so many international sellers from all over the world, they've worked out something out with the IRS so that every Zazzle international seller has to fill out a form that is going to either say, like, if it's possible with the, actually I'm moving ahead too fast. First of all, some countries have international tax treaties with the states, right? Which means that they've worked out something with the states that says that the citizens of that country that the tax treaty is with, will the United States agrees that the citizen can pay the taxes in their own country. Okay? Otherwise, you're considered a U.S. employee because you're getting paid from a U.S. company, and you have to pay U.S. taxes to the IRS, right? And that's the default. So if you don't fill out and so first of all, you have to figure out if your country has a tax exemption treaty with the U.S. In my case, in Canada, they do. You have to double check to see if it's that case for you. And so that means that, first of all, I don't have to pay tax in the States. I just have to pay tax in Canada. And if that works for you in your country, great. Otherwise, you are double taxing, getting taxed double. And that's just the way that it's going to happen. And you're going to have to run your business with that expectation that you're going to end up getting taxed twice. And it's unfortunate if you're in a country that doesn't have a tax treaty with the United States, but that's the way it is. And so you'll have to expect that and not get frustrated. You'll have to plan for it, that you have that money available to pay your taxes properly. Now, what's happened as well, though, is unless you fill out these exemption forms, and again, Zazzle will help you through that and tell you what forms to fill out and what to do and so on. Just check in your account settings, and under payments, it'll give you all the things that you need to know. I can't go into the details here, but then if it turns out that you aren't exempt, and then you're going to have that tax withheld already before Zazzle pays you out, because they're actually paying the IRS the tax every time you get paid, right? So make a concerted effort to find out if you have a tax treaty and to fill out those forms properly so that the IRS doesn't get your money initially, even if you're exempt. Right? Because afterwards, it's much more difficult to get that money back from the IRS. You have to do a lot more, jump through a lot more hoops than you do if you set that up with Zazzle first before you ask for your first payout. And that's going to take some time as well. Expect a couple of months, maybe even. So make sure that you get that sorted away as soon as possible. Don't just do it when you finally have money to pay out because you finally earned some money. And so those are my base pieces of advice for you with regards to getting paid. The rest you can learn from Zazzle. You can always contact them and go I need help. I need to figure this out. There's also some places where you can go and check International Zazzle's designer forums, but take their advice with a grain of salt, because the most important thing is that you ask your accountant, and it's worth paying the money to get a proper accountant to give you this legal advice so that you don't end up either owing taxes or having a lot of your income actually held when it really doesn't need to be held by the IRS. Okay? All right. So then the last point is learn how to design and sell to the U.S. market. And this is super important because, as I mentioned, I think at the beginning, almost 80% of the people who come to the Zazzle marketplace are U.S.-based customers, if not North American-based customers, right? So together, pretty much the U.S. takes over the majority of people that shop on the Zazzle platform, and that's another reason why you should design on the Zazzle.com platform, because why not take advantage of those U.S. customers and make sales to them, even if you live in another country. And so what we had to learn as Canadians, and if you don't even speak English, then it's even harder. But as even an English-speaking person, but has been told and taught how to spell things in a certain way, then the U.S. spells it differently. So a typical example is the word favor. In Canada, you have it's F-A-V-O-U-R, and in the States it's F-A-V-O-R, so the U is missing. And a lot of little spelling changes like that are going to be super important, because when you're doing your descriptions and your titles and your tags, then you've got to get those correct with the U.S. spelling. And also, especially when you've got people that are coming from the U.K. that are designing on the Zazzle platform, they might say jumper, which is a sweater, but in UK it's a jumper, and in the States a jumper is like a whole outfit from top to bottom. You got to take the whole thing off to go to the bathroom, kind of thing. Whereas with in the UK, jumper is a sweater. And so remember things like that that are unique and different in your country that may be not what the US based market knows. And so therefore use that terminology that's used in the States, read up on it, educate yourself. And also then you're looking even more into other things other than just, using the right language, and you're also using different terminology, as I mentioned, with the jumper and the sweater. And also just knowing whether or not people even have a custom that they do. Like, so a great example is in the UK and Europe, there's so many different ways that are traditional for marriage and wedding items, whereas in the States, it's very typical, but so different than what's happening in the UK, not even in terms of the styles, but the type of cards and the saying on the card. And it's really important to be addressing that customer specifically that's using it in the way that they're used to using it. And so obviously if you want to break into the wedding market on the Zazzle marketplace, you've got to learn anything there is to do with US based weddings. Even though there's weddings that happen in all kinds of ethnic religions and international people from all over the world are getting married in the US, but they may or may not be taking some of the traditions from their country and adding them to the invitations, for example, or they may be adopting the US-based traditional way of doing things. And this isn't just for weddings, right? It's for all kinds of other occasions, and there's color choices that are different for different parts of the world. And there's ways that people like things, like in certain countries, everything needs to be bold and bright and solid primary colors. And then in other cases, people are more into floral or primary color, pastel colors and muted tones. Right? And so do your research, make sure you're addressing all the things that the US-based market really wants, and then that way you'll have much more success on the Zazzle platform selling, even though you're an international seller. Now, the last thing I want to bring out is if you want help with this and you need a quick fix on how to get this straightened away so that you can be more successful. Obviously, there's the Profit by Design Academy coaching program, which we always offer as an opportunity. This is always there to help you, not as a sales pitch, just so you know. But we just feel really strongly that we've got so much there for you that is already taken care of and addressed and taught, so that you don't have to think of these things. You just have to get them into your system and continually do the routine, the step-by-step training and videos, which actually are the ones that are building your business as you're doing the coaching and training. So that's number one. And the second thing is you can ask, right? Here on this podcast, we definitely would love to hear from you and hear from your comments, but we're not going to go into specifics and tell you every little detail about every country's ins and outs as to which way it goes. But at the Profit by Design Academy, if you had that question, we would answer it for you, because we've been on the platform since 2008, and we have definitely sold to all of those different markets and also into the States, of course. And we know what to do and what it takes. Lastly, I think what's really important is just to understand that this is such a great opportunity for anyone who's in a country that maybe has issues with inflation or with job situations. And this is why I'm going to come back to the story with Jen. My daughter, Jen, first of all, she moved to Spain because she wanted to live abroad, and she met a boy, and, the whole thing, right? Travel Europe, have fun, pretend you already live the rich and famous lifestyle. And how do you do that? Well, she started her Zazzle business. She made enough money to get her plane tickets and go over and enjoy Spain. And then she kept staying, right? Because she loved it. And she started becoming more serious with her boyfriend and so on. And so, but this was at a time when there was this huge financial crisis in Spain. And, even though she had a work visa that she could actually literally work in Spain according to the Canadian government, and the visa that they had as a combined visa for allowing Jen to go and do this international exploring, whatever it was called, visa between Spain and Canada. she wasn't able to get a job because Spain said that, like, she even had one lined up, but they said that they weren't going to allow her to have the job because she was a foreigner and she was going to take away a job that someone who lived in Spain needed. And so therefore she couldn't even get the job that she was supposed to be doing, that she was qualified for, that they wanted her for. And so she had to find her own way. And luckily she had the Zazzle business already relatively set up. And so she just kept working on that while she was living in Spain. Now, she was always paying her taxes still in Canada until she decided that she was going to be there in Spain more so and became a resident for a while. And so then she set up everything in Spain with her accountant there and then filled out all the forms and did everything properly. So that in the end, she was always still paying her taxes. So be careful, make sure you do that properly, and you don't want to get in trouble. That we're always very honest and straightforward when it comes to that, because there's no goofing around here. This is a proper business, and unlike Jeff Bezos, we're paying our taxes, and rightly so. And so this is like multiple ways of helping you as an international designer, right? Like maybe you're in the same position as Jen, where maybe you're not traveling to another country, but in your country right now, unemployment's high and you don't have that ability to go out and get a job. But here's your perfect opportunity to be in the marketplace on the Zazzle platform, selling your things from your computer in your house. When you are ready to work online, we show you how to do it in 20 hours in a month, and we give you the step-by-step training and step-by-step things that you need to do in order to set up your business and start to grow and scale it. So it's just fabulous. And it's not just for people who are in the US, it's for people all around the world. So if you're listening and you've enjoyed this podcast and you feel like you feel more confident now to be able to take this and give it a try, then I'm so glad, because that means that I've done my job here in this podcast. So let's just regroup and say one more time what I covered so that you can go back to the different pieces and rewatch or re-listen depending on where you're seeing this podcast. So that you can really get these points. So the criteria for signing up to sell and be eligible to sell on Zazzle is really straightforward. You have to be 13 and you have to be able to access the online site and be able to, post products. So if you can do that, then you're in business. And then you should always design on the Zazzle.com site, even if you're from a different country or living in a different country, whatever, and make sure that you're specific to the US market for your descriptions and for the terminology and the things that you're doing. Like, for example, one of the good things that interests me all the time is, like, I go to Google Trends all the time, and for some reason the iPhone cases sell better on Zazzle than the Samsung cases. And I'm going like, oh, how comes that's happening? And then it turns out that Europe and Australia and New Zealand and everybody on that side of the world loves Samsung, whereas North Americans like iPhones. And so that's why there was this change. Like, I would sell Samsung cases to exactly those people that are Samsung users and prefer Samsung in those countries. I would sell the cases to, but it never occurred to me until I looked it up to see that was the difference. So you definitely need to make iPhone cases, obviously, because 80% of the people who shop on Zazzle are iPhone users, because that's where people in the States prefer iPhone. Obviously there's Samsung users as well, but not as many. And so by knowing how country behavior is in terms of their buying habits and shopping, and where the majority of people who shop on Zazzle come from, then you can get some really great insights as to what to do, what to focus on, and how to work smart rather than harder and be more profitable on the Zazzle platform. Okay, and then definitely get your tax situation sorted out so you can get paid by identifying yourself as, someone from a country where there's a tax treaty where you don't need to pay tax in the States, you just need to pay in your country. If that's the case, and then get all that documentation set up and straightened out before you get your first paychecks. Because if you ask for something to get paid out and you don't have all that documentation in and set with the Zazzle team and accounting, then unfortunately they're going to withhold your IRS contribution that you're supposed to make, and it'll be hard to get that back afterwards because you have to do a lot of paperwork and apply separately and deal with the IRS at that point. And so Zazzle's trying to make it as easy as possible, even though maybe for you it doesn't feel easy, but believe me, that's actually easier than another way that it could be happening. So deal with them in a nice, polite way, because they're trying to help you, and it'll all work out, okay? And then the last thing is, make sure that you not only learn how to design, but also to sell to that US market, because of that 80% being US based customers, so that we do really need to target them to be successful and profitable on the Zazzle marketplace. So I hope you've really enjoyed this. It's a little bit of a different tangent than our usual podcasts, because it's really just targeting one group rather than everybody. But I really appreciate your interest in this, and we've had a lot of people ask about this, so here's your episode. And so we'll see you again next week. Take care.